May have overheated this a little bit. Yep, gonna need to just let that sit. Hey, everybody. Welcome to 2025. And right off the bat, we have a super chat. Thank you very much, David Geip, for the support. I appreciate that. I appreciate that very, very much. Hey, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. I see Squid Game 2 has already come up. I have seen it, Redhead Media. I will have a review in the Break Room of Geeks tomorrow for that. Short version, while it is by no means bad, I do not agree that it is as good as the first season. I do not agree with that at all. But it is not bad, and people should not be staying away from it. Good evening. The children of the night. What the music they make. Dracula be a real fun part to play, actually. I wouldn't mind taking a crack at Dracula. I put a lot of femdom energy into it, I suspect. Oh, I do not drink wine. I don't know who that second person is, Ms. Wicked Wolf. Yes, I heard about Jimmy Carter. It's kind of hard to miss. No spoilers here, Black Cover. We will not be discussing that. As I said, I've got a review will be up tomorrow. I do still need to see the new Wallace and Gromit. Why they always dump a whole bunch of stuff like right at the end of the year, and like Season 7 of Dragon Prince. That thing's still going? Huh. All right. I mean, technically, Ms. Wicked Wolf, insofar as I turned it on to literally just watch the ball drop and flip off the New York mayor because he decided to show up there instead of, work with his lawyers on his corruption charges against him. But, yeah, I didn't watch, the performers or anything leading up to it. I did literally just watch the ball drop. Have you seen Lost in Borderlands? I don't even know what that is, Robin. So I'm gonna go out on a limb and say no. Am I gonna see the new Wolfman movie? Not planning to. How cold is it up there right now? Most of the day it was between 15 and 18 degrees. Excuse me. That's Fahrenheit for my non-American viewers who, use a system that makes sense. Dharma, thank you very much for re-upping the subscription. Greatly appreciated. Any thoughts on Epic the Musical? There are a couple of songs that really do it for me. The thing is, I've tried listening to it all the way through. It doesn't grab me in the way it has grabbed a lot of people. And I don't know if I'm just kind of too old to really get roped in by just a musical soundtrack anymore. I feel like, honestly, it's the kind of thing that I bet you if I'd listened to it in high school or college, I probably would have loved it. I don't know. I'm just having a hard time roping into it now. So, I don't really have any thoughts because I haven't listened to the whole thing. Jamie Clayton from Sense8 would be a great fit for Abigail Brand once the MCU does an X-Men project. I actually don't know a lot about the character of Abigail Brand. I've read some of the earliest stuff where she was introduced, but I don't know too much about what's gone on with her since. So I don't really have an opinion on that because I don't know that much about her. I don't really have any today, Ms. Wicked Wolf. Now, Beetlejuice the Musical special, I highly recommend it. I don't have a lot of interest. I generally have low interest on musicals based off movies, just as a principle at this point, just because it's overtaken so much of Broadway that I'm just kind of like, oh, for God's sake. Elijah Anderson, thank you very much for the super chat. Love from Boise. Watched your You Can't Separate the Artist from the Art video from 4 years ago. Loved it. Also, any excitement for Superman 2025? I'm glad you liked that video. I still reference it now and then because I still stand by what I said in it. And my views on that have not altered. Like, it's very rare for me to get legitimately excited for something before it's out. I am hopeful. But I am hopeful. The trailer gave me some good energy, some good feels. So we'll see. We don't need any more werewolves in rural Vermont than we already have, Mrs. Wicked Wolf. We're set. Thank you. How do I feel about Lockley in Babylon 5? I actually really like how much fun she is after season 5. And it's nice how they kept letting Tracy Scoggins play up kooky. Like, she's fine. I personally, and this is not the actor's fault, but I personally never quite got over the fact that she just really felt like a stand-in for it was supposed to be Ivanova. And I never fully got over that. I honestly, I have a feeling I kind of feel about her the same way I probably would have felt about Sheridan if Babylon 5 had ended after season 2. Like, if we only got one season with Sheridan and I didn't get to see him go on more of a journey and an arc and spend more time with him, I would have just been left feeling like, well, this is just the replacement Sinclair, and I never would have gotten over that. And unfortunately, because Lockley only gets that one season, that's kind of where I'm left with her. I didn't get enough time with her to overcome the feeling of like, this is just we have Ivanova at home. And again, not the fault of the actress. She did perfectly well with it. That's my hang-up. Well, you haven't seen the latest Wallace and Gromit. What are your rankings of the previous 5? Oh, jeez. I do think Grand Day Out is the weakest. Wrong Trousers is my favorite, but that's partially nostalgia because that was the first one I saw. But I probably still put that at the top. And then Were Rabbit, Close Shave, and oh crap, what is the other one? Hang on. Hope folks like the sound of my new loud mechanical keyboard. I wanted to say typewriter. No, it's just one that sounds a bit more like a typewriter. Matter of Loaf and Death. Okay, so yeah. So Close Shave, no, Wrong Trousers, Were Rabbit, Close Shave, Loaf and Death, Grand Day Out. Okay, there we go. I got it. I figured it out. I figured it out. I got there eventually. What is the next 4 and Leela classic Who serial you want to see? I don't know. There isn't really a ton of forethought that goes into the order that I do the things. Like I try and move around so that I'm not repeating the same doctor right after I've already done them. And sometimes I'll bunch stuff up if they're kind of linked, like I did all of the Key to Time season kind of back to back to back. And like sometimes the specific one that I do gets voted on by the Patreon supporters. So I don't know what the next one will be. I don't have it planned that far out. Besos, it means kisses. Tea, coffee, booze, other or some combo. Hot cider tonight, and just hot cider. I want to play your videos while doing chores, but I'm afraid my mom will say something gross about you. Oh, well, I'm sorry that that's the case, Black Cover. I mean, I suppose you can pull up stuff from 2017. What are your thoughts on 8 Crazy Nights? Only ever seen clips of it, Ms. Wicked Wolf. Never had an interest. I think I have some sort of infection because joints feel cold. You ever have a bath to warm you up when sick, then find it almost unbearable to get out? Yeah. I like a good hot bath in general. They're often difficult for me to get out of as a general rule. Have you ever read Glenn Weldon's The Caped Crusade? Nope, I have not. Let's see. Sorry, trying to catch up with the chat. Reminder, while I do try and... yes, we will, Carolyn. While I do try and keep up the chat, the one thing that will guarantee that I see your comment and or question is to do it as a super chat, which, if you hadn't already noticed, gets you the little gay heart of appreciation. Yeah, I don't know when I'm doing 4 again. Neku, it's going to be 5th Doctor is this month's. That got voted on. I mean, technically the vote is still open, but it's already tipped in favor one way to a degree that I don't expect it to change. So I consider that locked in. My bathtub is too small. They don't make them for 12 votes. Like, my ideal bathtub, I don't have. Like, my ideal bathtub would be most people's hot tub. I want something that I can sit in and the water is up to my chest and I'm resting my arms. Like, I would love that. I don't have that. I do have a decent sized clawfoot bathtub though. And if I'm willing to like slide down a bit and kind of put my feet out the end of it, I can at least like get a decent amount of submergence in it, which is nice. Been watching the first 3 Muppet movies for the first time in ages. Used to think Rainbow Connection was the song that made me tear up most, but Gonzo's song had me in bits. Those movies. I will say, like, when Rainbow Connection came up in the 2011 Muppets movie, that got me, especially when it came up at the end. Holy cow. Still haven't seen it, Ms. Wicked Wolf. And probably am going to miss it in theaters because it's leaving my movie theater on Friday. But Nosferatu's coming, and I really hope I can find the time to go and see that because I want to see that. Got my nieces a copy of the Gingerbread Man. I'm curious to see if they'll stop putting the Gingerbread Man plush in dresses when the story calls him a boy. I doubt it. They're probably not putting that much thought into it. Like, kids at that age just do it because they want to do it. There isn't. I don't want to imply like they don't think about anything, but like they're not putting that kind of cause and effect thought process into things a lot of the time. I mean, it's the reason why more often than not you ask young kids, "Why do you do that?" You just get. Well, I'm not sure you all have, Angus, because I haven't done it in a very long time. But yeah, the video's still out there. I still haven't seen any classic Who I Just Vote for the best title. Hey, fair. That is a valid way to vote. Just like our actual electoral system, there is no need to prove you have a basis of knowledge before casting a vote. Oh, that's nice. I hope it was a cute bunny rabbit, Ms. Wicked Wolf. If it weren't already used for autism, what would you think of referring to LGBTs as on the spectrum? Honestly, as a sentiment, it's already kind of accurate. Queerness in general is a spectrum. It's not a single thing. And some of the specific letters within that, like trans is absolutely, it's a spectrum. It's an umbrella. It's a bunch of things. So I wouldn't have an issue with that. Obviously, we can't because that has been like that refers to autism at this point. Like, I wonder if they already have a gender dress code in their heads at 3. I mean, probably when it comes to like people, like real people, they're probably not thinking about their toy in those terms, though, if that makes sense. Unheard Sirens Incorporated, Remy. Okay, I love the name. Thank you very much for the super chat. No question, just giving you some money. Love your channel. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Money, money, money. Must be funny in a rich man's world. I started tearing up at it in the 2011 film, but Animal finally getting back on the drums was what unleashed the waterworks. Same! Exact same. I was like, I'm okay. I can hold it together. And then, I'm like, oh, God! Yeah, that was it. That was it for me, too. Big same. Your comparison reminds me of this disgraced comedian who did a pretty funny bit about little kids having brain damage. I remember something that Dennis Leary said, and I'm going to rephrase. I'm going to paraphrase. I'm not going to use the exact words he did because it was the 90s. Like, you know, having kids is like having drunken little people just loose in your house. And yeah, like a little insensitive, but not altogether wrong. Have I seen The Substance? No, that has not been playing anywhere near me. I'm waiting for streaming on that. Hulk Hogan got booed out of the arena on Raw? Good. Anyone watch Muppet Mayhem? I wanted to. I never did get around to it. It's still on my watch list. That's assuming it's still up. Because I know Disney started pulling stuff too. Not as bad as Max has, but still. Unheard Sirens Incorporated, Remy, back again. I'm not queer. I'm cis, hetero, divergent. Okay. And you are absolutely still welcome here. While this is a very queer space, it is not an exclusively queer space. One Big Finish story that would be a good one to cover for Pride Month would be the 11th Doctor Audio, Sins of the Flesh. It's a story involving Cybermen and gay conversion. Huh. Interesting. Now, when you say 11th Doctor, is that one of those like narrated ones where someone's doing an impression? Because I don't think Matt Smith is participating in Big Finish, is he? I know some of them is Wicked Wolf. Song was the second best thing to come out of that show. The first best thing being the 7th episode. More specifically, the way kids will say, when asked why they did something. I mean, like, the thing is, they legitimately don't know why they do stuff half the time. The captions read, crowd boos. It was glorious. Yes! Beautiful. Film Nerdy. Thank you very much for the super chat. Hey, as a gay Brit, recently watched your channel community, and I love the representation and videos. Also great to see so many Americans who love Doctor Who. Yeah, when the show revived, I mean, especially the Tennant era really kind of started blowing it up over here. But yeah, it's got a pretty good foothold at this point. I think prior to the revival, being an American liking Doctor Who really did kind of mark you out as like the nerds that is to nerds what nerds were to normies. that was the level of Doctor Who was for a while. I'd almost bring my no pro wrestling watch just to see Hulk Hogan booed. Almost. Hey, fair enough. Have you seen Anora? Possibly one of the least judgmental films about a sex worker I've ever seen, if wildly tonally uneven. I've heard of it. I have not seen it. Is it weird that I believe Kermit and Fozzie as siblings more than Charles Grodin and Diana Rigg? I buy that. It's a full cast audio drama. Jacob Dudman does an excellent Matt Smith impression. I've got my hang-ups on the impression stuff, and like, I'm not saying it can't work. I'm not saying it can't be good. Heck, last time I went to Gallifrey 1, they had the voice actor who's been doing the War Doctor stuff, and I heard him do it live, and like, he's really good. So I don't want to knock the actors, but like, fundamentally, artistically, philosophically, it bothers me that they do that. And it's hard for me to get over that enough to be able to listen to those. I love Big Finish, but it does bother me that they do that. I watched a Canadian Tory leader give a speech today. Oh, like I wouldn't advise getting into Canadian politics right now. I had occasion to talk with Sarah, the fat culture critic, recently, and I hadn't been keeping up with what's going on in Canada, and it ain't great right now. It's like someone found a bank branch manager whose main hobby is chess and asked him to read a certain mustachioed individual's speech. Yeah, Canada, like, there's an election coming up, and like, maybe it'll turn out okay, but like, they're not, outlook isn't great, and I might have to revise my my countries that I could flee to if I had to. Not like, I don't want to give people too much of an impression that that's like a serious list, but that is, I'd be lying if I didn't say I kind of have a mental list of like, where could I go if it no longer was safe for me to be in America? Canada is getting bumped several notches down at present. I mean, not especially Ms. Wicked Wolf. I've noted already, I'm a bad person to ask, like, what are you excited for? I'm like, I know what I intend to watch, but to say that I'm excited is wrong. I'd like, the closest I get to excited is usually cautiously optimistic. So, I don't know, new season of Doctor Who, I guess. This stupid thing keeps hiccuping on me. I don't know why it does that. Hopefully everything was okay and it didn't like turn off for you folks. I have a bunch of content bookmarked on my streaming service to watch, but I can't bring myself to hit play. What's wrong with me? Nothing, Black Cover. I think most of us have that problem. I have so many things like marked and listed and you know, oh, your list, your things, watch later, and I'm just like, you know what? I think I'll rewatch this hour-long YouTube video I've already seen 5 times instead. I don't think it's a problem with you. I think it's a fairly common affliction. Phil, Happy New Year. Thoughts on Superman trailer, please. Well, not to be too mercenary about it, but I did do an actual reaction to the trailer over on my Patreon. It should not be, at least, behind a paywall, but you do have to at least be a member, even if not a paying member, to be able to see it. So if you want my full thoughts over there, broad thoughts are positive and hopeful. Excuse me. Yeah, that was the impression I got, John. Canadians sound like Americans, but talk like Brits. Canadians, I know many a lovely Canadian, some of which I've even met in person, and others of which I would love to meet in person. But you know, Yeah. So, stuff ain't great up there right now. And like, okay, I don't want to get I don't want to get bogged down in politics, but I will say right now, like, the thing to keep in mind for the turn that many countries are going through towards the right is should not be taken as an absolute embracing of the right's ideals. What is happening by and large is that stuff sucks right now. And generally speaking, when stuff sucks, whoever is currently in charge gets voted out because you're in charge, stuff sucks, give us the alternative. So the reason it's really bad right now is because most incumbent governments, or not most, but many incumbent governments in many major countries were whatever left in that country meant, even if if you're in America, the left is centrist at best. But the left party was in power, stuff sucked, and then the alternative is the conservatives. But as happened in America, in many countries, the conservatives have been infiltrated and or taken over by an extreme far right. So the standard cycle of we're booting out the people in charge because stuff sucks right now is unfortunately leading to these people gaining power. Now, like I said, that is a standard cycle, and it is hitting at an unfortunate time. And how long they'll be able to benefit from it, I don't know. I mean, I think a major part of why Trump lost in 2020 was COVID. Like, stuff sucked. And even if you feel like it is or isn't fair to blame him and his administration for that, it's the simple metric of stuff really sucked. And so they booted out the guy who was in charge. I mean, that's just kind of the thing that happens. But we've had this hit at a time where a lot of countries had incumbent, not all countries, but a lot of countries had incumbent governments that were some degree of left. And at the same time, the right in those countries was going more right. So, bad 1-2 punch. Sorry, my phone buzzed. I was just making sure it wasn't anything I had to address right away. Let's see. It's 20 movie shows in total. That's it, Black Cover? You definitely don't have a problem. My only claim to fame is that my brother wrote one of the New Adventure Doctor Who novels. Oh, that's cool, Mithril. Oh, ride that claim to fame. I have submitted a pitch to Big Finish that they did not take. That's my big claim to fame. I used to wonder why Jago and Lightfoot got their own audio series aside from being great characters. Now I wonder if part of it is to give them stories without 70s racism. That was probably part of it. Another part of it, honestly, I think at the time that they got locked in for that was that at that point, Big Finish wasn't really doing the let's just have impressionists of the doctors we don't have, which has become far more prevalent since then. But like at the time they were given their own series, part of the reason Big Finish had an incentive to like really dig into these smaller side things was because the actors were alive and available, and that was something they could pull stories out of. There isn't really a reason for them to go that direction so much now because, well, for the actors who haven't said yes, a lot of them have at least given clearance to have impressions done. So, you know, it's kind of, again, I don't want to disparage Big Finish. I like Big Finish. I like what they do. I hope they keep doing it. But, you know, some of the broad decisions, not my favorite. At the moment, I'm watching the new Gundam. They're doing a thing where it's CGI but meant to look photorealistic. Ugh, not a fan of that, broadly speaking. Sarvis the Drow. Having recently reread the first in the Dark Elf trilogy, that's an interesting name to see pop up. I was curious if you plan to review Hell of a Boss Season 2, now that the full season is out. or if you don't but have any plans you'd like to share. So here's the thing about Hell of a Boss. I do watch it, and I do like it. But the thing is, I rarely have had enough thoughts on any one specific episode because, like, they are things that you could definitely do full deep dives on and really dig into the character dynamics and all this stuff. And I don't have the spoons to do that with that particular show. But the episodes come out so far spread apart that doing what I would normally do on a show where I don't have a ton of thoughts on each individual episode, which is to deal with the season as a whole, it takes so long for a full season to come out. I'm like, what even happened within this season? And it's just, the way it's released doesn't gel with my reviewing brain. Like, I was able to talk about Has Been Hotel because a full season came out at a pace that was very digestible. Hell of a Boss is a lot harder to talk about with that. Not impossible, obviously. Lots of people talk about it, and I don't know, maybe when they start a new season, maybe I'll give it a shot at going episode by episode, but I don't know. I do watch it, and I do like it. Can we hear the pitch? I don't know if I'm allowed to do that. I think I am. That's why I prefer some form of direct democracy rather than elected representatives. That's got its own problems, largely logistical 255, because when you have direct democracy and you have just the mass, like, the theoretical benefit of representational democracy is that it's not the public's job to know how to do everything. You elect people where it is their job to know how this stuff works, because the rest of us have our normal freaking lives to live. So, like, there's logistical and, like, mental capacity hurdles with direct democracy once it scales past a certain size. But that's a whole other thing. So I'll give you the short version of the pitch, Aongus. So the story I pitched to Big Finish, I had a name for it even. It was called Four Psychiatrists. And it was leaping off of a single line from Amy Pond in the 11th Hour, where she says to the doctor how long it's been, like 10 years and 4 psychiatrists. And my idea is that the 4 psychiatrists who were talking to Amy about the doctor were 4 different incarnations of the master who knew that she had encountered him and were talking to her actually for slightly different reasons, each one, because each one had slightly different motivations for this. And like the full breakdown, I had it worked out a little bit more, but yeah, it was basically young Amy being interviewed about the doctor by 4 different incarnations of the master. That was the pitch. I'd really like it if Big Finish did some more Five and Perry stories. They haven't done some of those for a while. I don't think I've listened to a Five and Perry from Big Finish, or if I have, I've forgotten. The new Nosferatu did 2 things better than the original. The main female character has agency, and the Van Helsing character actually does something this time. Ooh, bonkers notion. Discord, yes. So Coyote Azul, I will address your super chat when I get back, and yours, the pup. I do have to go tackle the Discord. So reminder, the Council of Geeks Discord is a Patreon perk for $2 members and above. So if you want access to that, go there. And you can also ask questions there, and it guarantees I'll see them much in the same way that super chats do. Not that I don't want the super chats. I love the super chats. Anyway. It's the Hell of a Boss 2 question. Do you have any plans to review Hell of a Boss Season 2? Kind of already tackled that. Short answer, no, just because I can barely remember which episodes actually fall under season 2, and it's been so dang long since they happened. Maybe if I'm feeling spicy when they start airing new ones eventually, whenever the heck that happens, maybe I'll try starting to do them episode by episode. I don't know. We'll see. Moving on. What age do you think kids should be allowed to play MMORPG type games where you're expected to interact with other players to like form guilds and strategize? I have no idea. My kiddo has not really expressed much of an interest in those kinds of games. And I know they come in a lot of different flavors. Some have, active voice chat. Some just have text chat. Some have very limited capabilities for chat. And I think it depends on the nature of the game and the nature on your kid. I'm not going to set a hard and fast rule about that. And thankfully, it was something I really haven't had to worry about with my own kiddo. I found out a pizza place near me belongs to a chain that got caught in 2009 knowingly hiring Afghans from human traffickers, i.e. people who couldn't assert any workers' rights or even quit for fear of getting arrested and or deported to a war zone if they didn't keep their heads down. I don't think my family ever have, but do you think it would be unethical to eat there, even though they apparently don't do that anymore? Short answer, yes. I think it would be slightly more complicated if it wasn't a pizza place, to be honest, because lots of places, there's no way that's the only pizza place. So if you have the option between supporting a pizza place that used to knowingly, I was going to say encourage, knowingly engage with human traffickers, and one who didn't, just go with the one that didn't. Even if this other one supposedly stopped, why? Just go to someone who's never done that before. So yeah, it's not a massive unethical thing, but you've got other options. You don't need to support that. So since the election, I've seen a lot of debates in quotes, oh boy, between liberals and leftists, oh dear, about the silly idea that Kamala lost because the left went hard on trans rights. They did not. The leftists in the debate usually correctly points out that most Democrats and mainstream liberals hardly ever say anything in support of trans rights. That is accurate. When you say something like that, should you add on something like, they're not talking about it, but they probably should be? I ask because a couple of times when I've heard leftists say this, that the implicit statement seems to be, you're obsessed with a wedge issue most voters don't care about, and that rubs me a wrong way a bit because it comes across as minimizing what's happening to your community. It would be nice if some of them would tack that on and make it clear, because, right now, trans people are in a situation where the two parties in this country where I am, one is actively campaigning against our rights to exist, and the other one is doing nothing. Now, granted, one of those is clearly better, but if you believe that we shouldn't be getting stamped out, then maybe saying that actively as opposed to just being like, oh, well, they're not really supporting trans people anyway. No, they're not. So you're correct that we're not driving a wedge, but they should be. Yeah, I think that's something that should be tacked on. All right, moving on. When you and Jesse move on to Battlestar Galactica after finishing Crusade, are you going to have the bandwidth to do the original series or just the reboot? If the reboot, are you starting with the miniseries or the main series? The plan right now is to do the reboot. Maybe when we're done, we'll do the original series as a as a fun comparison, but that's not currently in the cards. As for if we're starting with the miniseries or the main series, I don't know. Since Jessie is the one who's seen the show and I haven't, that is in her hands. You'd have to ask her. Have you ever refused a commissioned review on principle? No, not that I can think of. The closest I've come to refusing something is I have noted to people sometimes okay, I have actually reviewed this before. It was so long ago that my feelings might have changed. So if you want me to do it again, I will. Or if they haven't really made clear, what they're hoping I feel about it, because since most commissioners usually want me to like the thing, that's kind of the assumed thing. If I look at something and go okay, I either have seen this before and I know I think badly about it, or I have a pretty good feeling that I'm going to have a lot of bad things to say. Are you still sure you want me to review this if I'm just going to tear into it? I've given those words of caution to commissioners before. I don't think I've had to actually turn down a commission on principle. And I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't. It would have to be a pretty... I don't even want to think about what it would have to be. But I'm sure there are some things that someone would go, hey, I want you to look at this. And I would just go, nope. But as yet, no, that has not happened. Have you watched any of Blake's 7? No, I have not. I should, but I haven't. All right, these next 3 questions are all very tied into the same thing, which is the War Games re-edit. So, okay, I'm actually gonna read all 3 of these questions because the answer is all encompassed in one thing. What do you think of the War Games re-edit using the Master's theme to hint that the War Chief being an earlier incarnation of the Master? What do you think about the Second Doctor being shown images of his future generations to pick from for his next regeneration in place of the original drawings? What do you think about the War Games new regeneration scene disproving season 6B? I don't like any of it, and it has nothing to do with the specifics. My distaste for that has to do with my general distaste for this homogenization of our media. What I fundamentally dislike about those kinds of updates and changes is they're not fixing a problem. None of this stuff were mistakes. None of these were things that they would have done differently at the time. They made what they intended to make. And now we're going back and trying to act as if it is homogeneous and fully lines up with what is happening now. And it's not. It never was. It was never meant to be. I don't like this reworking, reframing, and remastering of historical pieces of art to make them better resemble the art that we make now. Art, amongst other things, is a time capsule of the time. It's a time capsule of the writing styles, the acting instincts, the special effects technology. It is a snapshot of what was possible and what was believed to be good at the time it was made. And when you do this kind of nonsense, you erase that. And I find that to be a vandalization of art. I just do. I didn't like when George Lucas did it to his own works. I don't like it when it's done to Doctor Who. Stop! Stop doing it. I actually wonder if I should add that to the docket. I think it's been long enough since the War Games thing came out that it's not quite topical anymore. I might have to wait until the next major re-edit revision thing that comes out and prep myself to talk about it then, because this stuff actually actively irritates me. I really want them to stop. I give a pass to the animated recreations strictly for the purpose of we don't have those. Those are ones we don't have. So we either get it animated or we don't get it at all. I give a pass to that. But otherwise, this tinkering with stuff that we have, stop it! Stop! Okay, coming on back. Let's see. Ooh, we got a few super chats in here. I got to catch up. Coyote Azul. Thank you very much for the super chat. Hoping we don't get snow here on Friday. Happy New Year. I know some areas have been getting it real hard. We've just had a little snow here today. Not too much. The Pup. I started reading your book. I haven't finished yet, but I like it. And out of curiosity, are there any plans for a sequel? Strictly speaking, no, not a direct narrative sequel at any rate. What I have is almost a finished draft of another story in the same world. But no, I do not currently have plans for a direct sequel where it deals with the same characters. Twilord. Thank you very much. Ireland is weird. Oh, okay. Far right failed mercifully, but a lot of voters don't believe we have a right or a left. Voting historic oligarch parties on habit. I mean, that can also be a thing. You'll have people And I mean, honestly, this is a big part of what's going on with the Republican Party in the US. Like, it's been taken over by these extremists, but you have people who don't agree with them, but vote Republican anyway because, well, basically because they've always voted Republican. And they are continuing to do so almost out of habit and a reflexive, like, well, I can't vote for a Democrat, never ever. And they continue to vote regardless of what the Republican Party has actually become because they don't know what else to do. So yeah, we do see that. When did Star Wars Supreme Omega? When did Star Wars fandom become toxic? Is it because fans were disappointed with 99 film prequels are flawed, but fans act like Lucas committed some holy crime? I've said this before, and I will keep saying it. The Star Wars fandom has always been toxic. I remember being in grade school and seeing like fifth graders bully second graders because the second graders liked the Ewok cartoon. Star Wars fandom has always been toxic. It didn't become toxic. Now, as I've talked about before, the toxicity kind of spilled out into the mainstream thanks to the internet and then later social media. It is now much more highly visible, but the elements within the Star Wars fandom that are like that have always been there, at least for my entire lifetime. If there's some prelapsarian state, some uncorrupted Garden of Eden point in history when the Star Wars fandom was not like that, it was before I was aware of fandom as a thing. So, when did they become toxic? As far as I am concerned, they always have been. When did they become aggressively toxic? You could say there were two major demarcation points, one being the release of the prequels, then the other being the release of the Disney stuff. Part of that has to do with just a new thing in a series you've loved since childhood came out, but it doesn't make you feel the way that that other one did as a child because it never could, and now you're going to hate on it for that fact alone, and ignore the, like, this is why fans who were younger when the prequels came out tend to like the prequels. Like, they were aimed at kids. But anyways, like, it's a whole thing. Coyote Azul, thank you very much. More super chats. The best thing I remember about the original Battlestar Galactica is the Viper launch sequence. Does anyone remember that, or how other shows like Buck Rogers tapped that feel? I don't have a visual point of reference for that, so I don't really have a point of comparison. What is my book called? My book is called Dreams of Fire, The Blue Box. And if you look it up, keep in mind that it is listed under Nathaniel Wayne as an author. That's not a mistake. I did intentionally release it with that. I don't consider it a dead name, so don't worry about it. But if you're looking for Vera Wild listed as the author, you're not going to find it on that book. But again, Dreams of Fire. If you check the descriptions of any of my videos, there should be a link in there. Well, thank you for stopping in, Neku. I appreciate it. Coyote Azul back again. What do we got this time? Maybe we shouldn't call capitalists and call them what they really are, merchant oligarchs. I mean, we could. It probably wouldn't stick, but yeah, like, yeah, it's all just a mess. And there goes the frickin' stream page again. I don't know why it keeps doing that. Anyway. Last night I had a nightmare where nuclear war broke out and my boomer dad was just, well, our house didn't blow up. I'm sure things will be fine. I mean, that is the attitude of many people. The thing is, it kind of has to be. Because especially if you live middle class, or if you live in, quote unquote, the Western world, then your attitude kind of has to be, well, I'm okay where I am. Because if your attitude wasn't that, then you'd live in constant depression and existential dread at the horrors being inflicted across the rest of the world. And human beings aren't really built to grapple with that. So we compartmentalize and we shrink our world down and think, well, I look out my front door and nothing's on fire, so things must be okay. It is a frustrating way of viewing things, but it's very human. Twilord, thank you very much for the super chat. I'm shocked that Sonic Movie 3 was good enough that the fandom aren't being toxic. It's adapting one of the franchise's sacred cows. SA2's stories. So I have only ever experienced the Sonic fandom from the outside looking in. My impression, and I could be completely wrong in this, I don't know, but my impression of the Sonic fandom is that, God. All right, I'm going to be brutally honest. Since such a high percentage of Sonic is of questionable quality, the impression I get is that's a fandom that in general is much more likely to circle the wagons because they don't expect it to be mainstream successful. One of the things that'll happen with Star Wars fans is that Star Wars is like mainstream successful. And so when a Star Wars thing comes out and isn't mainstream successful, good or bad, that divides the fandom. But, you know, when you have something that's that is niche and has always been niche, I think you tend to get a little bit more like, we must just protect it. But this is kind of bad. Shut up, we're protecting it. Again, that is my outsider sense that I get from it. I could be completely off base. If you had to be an inanimate but sentient object, what would you choose? A rock with googly eyes. I don't know. Film Nerdy, thank you very much for the super chat. I'm writing a video essay and potential video on vampires in media and their subtext. I was reading Marx and was surprised how much Marx throws the word vampires and vampirism to describe capitalists. I mean, it's accurate. Whether he intended to or not, the fact that Bram Stoker made Dracula a count, part of the ruling class, part of the moneyed class, feeds into the notions of what vampires are and do really, really well. Again, whether Stoker realized the full implications of that or not, I have no idea. But they're there. They are definitely there. Because, like, prior to Dracula, and specifically Count Dracula, vampires, like, it was just a creepy monster that was out there, you know. Like most folk monsters, just like, ooh, this, watch out for that, it's creepy. But the idea that the ruling class were these things, that's an idea with a lot of punch. There's a reason. There is a US movie that shows what happens. Ooh, geez. Yep, that's spent. There's a US movie that shows what happens in a nuclear war in an area community that doesn't get nuked and is physically okay, but can't remember its title. I feel like I've heard of that, Coyote Azul, but I'm drawing a blank too. Okay, Muppet version of Pan's Labyrinth. Who's playing the captain and who gets their face smashed in with the ball? Oh my gosh. I mean, if you're casting the Pan's Labyrinth cast as Muppets, I think Sam the Eagle kind of has to be the captain. Like, I broadly speaking, I think of Sam better than that, but like, who the heck else would it be? From the periphery of it, I tend to view Sonic fandom as being 3 to 5 fandoms in a trench coat. Classic games, adventure formula games, boost era games, Saturday morning, AM, and the Archie comics. Yeah, kinda. There's a lot of schisms in the Sonic fandom, isn't there? Ossified ruling class equals vampire / parasite. Like, it works. It, as a metaphor, it works real well. It was one of the things I really liked, and I don't know if it's true in all translations, but in some translations of Vampire Hunter D, the vampires are never called vampires. They're just called aristocrats. And I really love that. Bram Stoker was an Irishman. He had no reason to love the aristocracy. Cool. I actually don't know that much about Stoker as an individual. I feel like the captain would be one of the human actors, him and Ophelia. Yeah, that would probably be a better idea. I love your conversation on, yeah, it's interesting choice. He uses account to describe it. Class structure. I think my only problem is he targets other rich nobility as his victims. I mean, you know, I would just consider that to be a general blind spot. You know, because that's, unless you were Dickens, and I don't even know if they were contemporaneous as far as timelines go, but unless you were Dickens and making your entire story about living the downtrodden life, yeah, most protagonists in English written works around that time tended to be of some level of notoriety, or at least living within that sphere. Thank you, Carolyn, for the reminder. Let me finish this cider, get the super chat, and then, yes, I'll hype what's coming up. Okay. Supreme Omega! Sneaking in a super chat right at the back end. Does Star Trek ever reach the same level of fandom toxicity? I'm sure there are toxic fans, but it never seems to be as bad as Star Wars fandom. Thoughts? Yeah, I think. Oh, and Twilord now. Folks sneaking in at the last minute. The thing with Star Trek is it is harder to ignore its base level socialist and leftist principles that diversity is good and a post-scarcity society where there's no such thing as money anymore would also be good. So I think it is harder to be a Star Trek fan and have the kind of toxicity you get from toxic Star Wars fans, because Star Wars, regardless of what political things there are in it, because Star Wars has always had politics in it, they're easier to ignore in Star Wars because X-Wings and TIE fighters and lightsabers. You focus on that and you can ignore the meaning underneath. Star Trek, its politics are a lot more on the surface. I always cock my head when I find someone who's a conservative who claims to be a fan of Star Trek. I'm like, are you though? Are you really? Because like the core fundamental principles of Star Trek just don't vibe with that. And so you don't get the same kind of splits and divisions. What happens within actual Star Trek fandom, not grifters from the outside trying to just jump in on it to make it part of their culture war, which is a thing that happens to literally all fandoms at this point. So ignoring that, and actually within the fandom, you tend to get just more splits about preferences for types of storytelling or types of stories, and things like that tends to be a bit more of the divide within Star Trek. Again, based off my observations. I am only somewhat within Star Trek fandom. Twilord, I got to get through these two as quick as I can. Sonic fandom is also, I mean this literally quite autistic and changing the childhood media of us autists. And then Twilord again with the second half. To quote a Sonic song, thunder, rain, and lightning, danger, water rising, clamor, sirens wailing. It's such a bad sign. Ah, gotcha. Okay. Fair enough. All right. So, no, I didn't see it, Adrian, and I won't, and I don't want to. I kind of went off on that a little bit earlier. Anyway. Okay, so what's coming up? Tomorrow, there will be a video in the break room of Geeks, which will be my review of Squid Game Season 2. On Saturday, I will talk very specifically about the trans character, and that video will be here on the main channel. So there's that. Tomorrow at 12:30 Eastern time, I will be streaming on Twitch again. I haven't streamed on Twitch yet this year, but I'll be starting that up again. I'm going to be playing a game called Unmetal, which is basically a parody / tribute to the old Metal Gear games. Not Metal Gear Solid, but like old NES Metal Gear games. I started playing it a little just to kind of see what it was like, and once I realized just how funny it was, I'm like, no. I need to do this on stream. So that's what I'll be streaming on Wednesday and potentially Friday as well, depending on how long it goes on and how much I get into it. So that's what is coming up in the immediate. Oh, and I'll have a review for the finale for Creature Commandos either Thursday or Friday. I'm not sure which, but it'll be one of those two. And I think that's everything. So thank you very much for joining me. Take care of yourselves. This has been lovely. Thank you for the support, the super chats, and just the hanging out with me. I greatly appreciate it. So please remember that you are beautiful, you are valid, you are loved. You are the council. I am just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. McCavity!